Hi, and welcome to the Picard cast. I'm your host, Brooke, and with me, of course, this week is our wonderful co-host, Rebecca.
Hello, good to be back. Thanks. I was gonna say thanks for having me, like I'm a guest on this show, but it's our show, so I guess thanks for doing our show.
Thanks for being the one that does most of the talking this week. If you can't tell, we switch off. And we have a guest with us tonight, Mark.
All right, so I can say thank you for having me tonight.
Yes, you get to. Mark is co-host of the Nerdaholics podcast.
Yes, Lenny and I do our best to talk about whatever TV, movies, and games we're playing, and then we also record a D&D game that we're currently playing.
Oh, I didn't know that.
It's a lot of fun.
Cool. So, we have a couple questions we asked before we start. What really got you into Star Trek?
Okay, sure. I've always watched Star Trek. My parents are science fiction people. They watched everything. They watched Star Trek, Battlestar, Star Wars, Doctor Who. And Star Trek was always just kind of special because I started Next Generation. And it was like one weird thing because it came out when I was a kid and it came on right at my bedtime. But my parents would allow me to stay up, that extra hour, one night a week, just so I could sit there and watch Star Trek with them. And they would get me the toys, the little Playmate toys, and I just loved it. It's always had so much fun with it, and I identify with different characters, and I love the different stories and all that. But yeah, I love all the shows. I'm one of the few people who actually likes the Enterprise. I am like one of the few defenders of it. I think it's a great show. I love Scott Bakula. I thought they did some great storylines there. And I even like the new stuff. I like Discovery. It's not nearly as good as Next Generation, which is my favorite, but it's still really good.
Cool. And our other question we always like to ask is, why did you pick this particular episode?
I've always found the Borg extremely fascinating. So when I saw that the episode with Hugh was coming up, I'm like, oh, I got to get that one. Hugh was such an interesting character where he starts off, as part of the collective, and he has self-consciousness, and then by the end, he's aware of who he is and what he is. So when I saw Hugh pop up, I'm like, I got to do that Hugh episode.
Well, I did see that actor is coming back, probably playing Hugh again in Picard. So spoilers, anybody? Sorry, maybe I should have said that. Oops. So, if you'd like to come back for that one, we'd greatly like to have you back. And we haven't even started, but it's because we already know you.
That's true. We know you IRL because we have met you and you've met us, and so we're actual friends, not just internet friends.
Right?
Right.
We might be in 3 different states right now, but we are actual friends. I know everyone thought we were in Chateau Picard recording, but no.
Wait, we're not? Where am I? Okay. Oh, it's just New York. Okay.
Yeah, that would be way cooler.
Oh, yes. Sipping on some red wine. Is this the 76? Oh, no, it's the 77.
We're going to go on to this episode. We didn't really specifically say yet. We're doing Borg from Season 5, Episode 23. That was pretty close to the end of the season. The synopsis that I had on my Netflix was very short. That's usually where I get my synopsis from. The Enterprise finds a lone Borg drone separated from the collective and brings him aboard. Even if you've never seen it, you'd be like, what? Like if you were going in order and you'd already seen the whole thing with Picard being assimilated and all that, you would just be like, oh, this can't end good. In the first scene, we have a regular opening. We don't have any kind of special cold opening. Captain's log. Stardate is 45854.2. Or Mark 2, what did they say? Point 2?
Point 2.
Tuesday, June 11th, 2368 at 1844 hours.
That's amazing. There's a website that figures out what the star date is.
Several of them, but I have one that I specifically use, so they're all the same.
No, it's just neat. I've never known that.
Yeah, it is really cool, because the one I use, it'll do it for the different timelines and, like the different ways that they're done and everything, so that's kind of cool. This scene, we hear from Captain Picard that the Enterprise is charting 6 star systems for colonization, and then it goes to the bridge, and Data picks up on a self-repeating pattern coming from a moon on the 4th planet of one of these star systems that they've come upon. Riker thinks that it is a distress call, and Picard agrees, so they're going to go down and see what's going on. It is Riker, Worf, and I write Beverly is the name since there's more than one Crusher, but it's always weird whenever I read her name. So they beam down, and they find a young, injured Borg. Beverly convinces Picard over the comm system to bring him aboard because she wants to help him. She took her Hippocratic oath and all. No one else is really sure about that. Worf was kind of, let's just kill him off and pretend like he died in the accident.
I mean, I feel like this is always like stuff like this is always like Worf being his most Worfiest. Yes. Like let's kill it. Normally it's like, no, Worf, let's not do that. But in this case, you kind of have to think, would that have been a good idea? It's interesting because it's like these are the Borg, and it's like, well, let's just kill him and let's be done with it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was an interesting moral crossroad right at the very beginning of the episode, because it's ship safety versus should we help this person?
Yeah, it's kind of like that whole idea. I mean, obviously, like, if you have watched TNG, you know exactly who the Borg are, and we know how terrible and relentless they are, right? So it's like, it's almost like, what if you were to compare, I guess, to our day and age, like, what if a serial killer was injured in, like, a car accident and he's brought into, like, a hospital? You could see people being like, why should we help this guy? Like, he's killed dozens of people. He's killed, he's a mass murderer. Forget this guy, right? But a doctor has taken, as you said, a Hippocratic oath to help. And so you do see Beverly like, we should help him, and everyone else is like, no, let's not do that at all because they're Borg.
Did.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't have a lot sort of sci-fi or fantasy even background. I always say Star Wars is more fantasy because they don't have the same sort of villains. But because I love Doctor Who so much, the Borg are like wide sweeping as the Daleks, but they do the things that the Cybermen do, because I always feel like the Daleks would beat the Cybermen. Where they, like, because the Cybermen will take over people and assimilate them, basically.
Yeah, I've always felt like the Borg are a perfect cross between Daleks and Cybermen. Yeah. Because you think about it, like, the Borg are a perfect blend of living tissue or a physical body merged with technology, but then they have a hive mind like the Cybermen do. And they do, and like, just like the Cybermen, they assimilate people, very quickly. And so, like, once they assimilate you, you've only got like a very short period of time before you can unassimilate somebody. And otherwise they're pretty much gone forever.
Yeah, maybe someday we'll get the great sci-fi war, Cybermen versus Borg.
Whoa.
Oh, man, who wins in that?
The great sci-fi crossover.
Oh, man. Who wins in a war between the Borg and the Cybermen?
I don't know.
The Cybermen are completely covered in armor, and they could, like, rip out some of the, like, tubes and things all hanging off the Borg.
Yes. Yeah. That would be an interesting thing to see. I would pay money to watch that match.
For sure.
If there's any comic book writers out there, get started on that.
Yeah, for real. Do a good crossover. Doctor Who meets Star Trek.
Well, they have, but not like that. That's
true.
Star Trek and Doctor Who villains. That's the thing I had in my notes was that the Enterprise is charting these star systems for colonization. And I wrote, the Federation must still be run by white men.
Still Sorry. Colonizing.
No offense.
Oh, it doesn't hurt my feelings.
So, I just thought of
England at
colonizing
least,
everything.
True. At least the Federation does not destroy indigenous people to supplant their own colonies there.
Right. Well, I mean, at least we hope they don't. I mean, the Enterprise is just supposed to, like, meet new people and figure out who they are and then say, hey, do you want to join the Federation? But, there could be somebody out there that's just coming back and wiping them all out.
True. I hope not. At least I hope that they're not.
I hope not.
Federation.
After, they get the Borg on board, Picard goes into his ready room, and Troy follows him because she's got to ask him questions and then answer his questions with questions. She's worried that this is going to bother him, and I put in the notes that it might cause him some PTSD, which they don't specifically say that, but that's definitely what they're saying. Did you all feel that way?
I totally got that watching it yesterday and again this afternoon. But on my first watch, when I watched it back in the 80s, I did not get that at all. But I was a kid then, so.
Right.
But yeah, when I saw that immediately, I'm like, oh wow, she's just making sure that he's gonna be all right with this.
And I feel like, the late 80s and the early 90s, people weren't really talking about PTSD a whole lot, even though it's something that soldiers have dealt with, besides other people who have dealt with trauma. And I think after this episode, I didn't even write down when this episode came out. I'm sorry, you all. So then I'm like, I can't explain it. Gulf War and all that, like that really that kind of brought a little more to light people coming back and having PTSD, and then any other kind of traumatic experience you have, you could too. And so I feel like maybe that's why they didn't use the words, but at least they kind of put out that idea out there, because I know a lot of people didn't care about mental health at all then.
92.
Thank you.
Well, if you think about it, I mean, even though it's not given that name, but the Rambo franchise is really about a guy who's got severe PTSD after the Vietnam War.
That's a good point.
When you think about that first Rambo movie, especially, he's just back from the war not that long ago, and he doesn't have a place to really stay, and he's drifting, and he gets attacked by these guys, and all he just wants to do is, have a meal in the diner, and it, really sets him off, to get all Rambo on everybody's ass, So I think people have been dancing around, I think Hollywood, not people. Yeah. I think Hollywood has been dancing around the idea of PTSD without saying what it is, but I think today, we have a name, people have... mental health professionals have given it a name. And so, it deals with it, but without naming it as PTSD, because even Troy says, even after an assault, even if a victim is recovered, they may still have residual effects. Well, that's PTSD. And that's what she's worried about for him.
I do have to say this about Troy. I don't always think they give her enough. But I like the idea that they have a counselor on the staff for everyone on board, because it is something that's important, and it was something that it's still in 2019 hard for some people to talk about.
Yeah, I like the fact that she recognized that he would have a problem with this right away. It wasn't something that she stumbled upon later on down the road. She knew immediately after they said the Borg that he was going to have an issue.
Well, and he's going to say that he's fine, but she's an empath, so she can tell that he's not fine.
Right.
That too. But I forgot that I put in my notes. Of course, the woman has the humanity / empathy / sympathy for this Borg and wants to bring him on board when all the guys are like, no. So...
Yeah, I think for sure they've established through other episodes that definitely, Beverly is very much a bleeding heart, right? She stays behind when she shouldn't to help people, and she does things that puts herself in danger sometimes because she is a doctor and she takes it very seriously. But yeah, I mean, the chick wanted to save the Borg. Yeah,